In this episode, we speak with Mark Roberge. Mark is a senior lecturer at Harvard Business School where he teaches sales, marketing, and entrepreneurship. He's also managing director at State Shoe Capital, a venture capital firm backed and run by go-to-market executives, helping startups build world-class go-to-market capabilities. He's the author of the best-selling book, The Sales Acceleration Formula, using data technology and inbound selling to go from 0 to 100 million. Prior to these roles, Mark served as SVP of Global Sales and Services at HubSpot, scaling revenue from 0 to 100 million. Mark was ranked number 19 in Forbes' top 30 social sellers in the world. He's an MIT graduate and has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Forbes Magazine, Inc. Magazine, Boston Globe, TechCrunch, Harvard Business Review, and other major publications for his entrepreneurial ventures.
Real life.
Superpowers.
Technology. It's alive! Real life.
Superpowers.
Hey, Mark, how's it going?
Good, Ronan.
We're really intrigued about the beginning of what's called the end. So the middle of the story is, as a risk taker, you decided to jump on board to HubSpot, where there's actually nothing happening, which is a really big risk. And you were there at the beginning. So how'd you make that decision, and what happened before that to make that decision?
Yeah, I think the decision to take big risks, that was already ingrained in my career, and I can talk about that. The decision to go to HubSpot was a bit serendipitous, which I've seen a pretty significant trend in the good things that happen in my career and how serendipitous and unplanned they are, which has really changed my perspective on planning. But I started my career, came out of school as an engineer, went to Accenture, big consulting firm, wrote code for 2 years. This is right at the end of the 90s where entrepreneurship was exploding in the US and everywhere around the world. A couple partners at Accenture left to start a mobile company, and I jumped with them and just never looked back. Loved the startup scene, loved the upside, loved the risk, loved the potential impact, loved the fast pace. It was just everything I was looking for in a career. And decided at that point I was an entrepreneur, which comes with risk. It's just, you have a higher tolerance with it. And to be honest with you, this is also right around the time of the dot-com bust as well. And many people who are working at Enron and Arthur Andersen and huge companies that really got hit. I mean, you start to really wonder, are you really that safe at a big company too? Right. Is it really that risky to go to a startup? And I just don't think it is. I mean, I talk to my students all the time. It's like an individual startup is risky, but if you pick a hot industry and you get the company run, you usually have significantly increased your marketability and even stability if that's what you're choosing for. If you go into blockchain and you pick the wrong startup and you're there for 3 years running marketing, doing sales, in engineering a product, and your company goes under, but blockchain explodes, you're a hot commodity. All the companies that are growing want to hire you because no one has experience in this and you have so much insight. So anyway, it's really changed my perspective on risk. I ended up, going to MIT after that to kind of learn about entrepreneurship and solidify my place in the ecosystem. Started a social networking company myself that I raised $1 million for, executed it for 2 years, didn't have success with that one. Dharmesh Shah was one of my investors. He's the co-founder of HubSpot. When I was sort of exiting or struggling with my company, he and Brian Halligan, who'd come on as the co-founder at that point, recruited me to be full-time because I was selling for them and they thought I was doing a good job. And at the time, you're right, we were only 3 people. It was hugely risky. I had a baby. I had a pregnant wife. I had a new mortgage. It was crazy.
How did you decide to do it still?
Well, it was honestly out of desperation. I mean, at that point, it was I knew I was going to get my next round of funding for my startup. I was the loan, I had $100,000 in loans from my business school. I had a wife that wasn't working and a baby with another one coming, a mortgage. I mean, it's pretty stressful. So I literally thought I was going to have to go back to a big company, which would have been soul crushing for me as a passion entrepreneur. And, Brian and Dharmesh didn't know this. I mean, they were just we're about to scale. We're about to raise our Series A. You're doing a great job selling for us. Why don't you come sell and build a sales team? And I literally was just thinking, this is awesome. I can collect a paycheck for 4 months and get my feet under me. And like 10 years later, we're ringing the bell on the New York Stock Exchange, taking the thing public. So it was just, to go into sales, to go to HubSpot was not anything I pursued. It was just what fell on my lap. And since then, to write a book, to join the faculty at Harvard Business School, to start a venture capital firm, none of those things were things that I pursued. They were things that landed on my lap. And they were some of the best things that I ever did in my career. So it's kind of funny that like have a plan, but just like be open-minded to the stuff that comes to you. You know what I mean? Because that can be really, impactful stuff in your career.
And how did you decide to start selling? Because you're saying that you were doing that straight out of college in your own company, but still.
When I came out of undergrad, I was coding. When I went to the first startup in New York, the mobile startup, I was on product. I did a little bit of like account management. When I started my own company, I was doing everything. And then when I went to HubSpot, like Dharmesh first engaged with me when it was just him. I was a consultant to him just on like strategy and thinking. And then when he brought Brian in to co-found the business with him, Brian's a sales guy. He's like, hey, we got you 1 day a week. You seem smart. Just sell. So that's how I got into sales. Was he just wanted customers. So I'm like, great, I need the paycheck. I'll sell.
Weren't you afraid of the stigma?
That definitely exists in like high-end business schools. Like it's looked at as a blue-collar job. But like I was honestly torn. I knew in the entrepreneurial world I didn't want to be like a programmer. I had done it. I had enough of foundation. I liked the revenue stuff more. But I was torn between marketing and selling during my business school journey. Like I loved marketing because it was more data-driven. It seemed like the world was heading more toward a marketing-driven world. But I loved selling because I liked the deals. I love the people interaction, and they made good money too, which is the provider that was important to me. So I was a little torn, and when Brian pushed me in that direction, it's just like, let's go. And it was cool because I was selling advanced marketing solutions. So I was kind of like walking both lines of developing myself as a marketer, but also developing my skills as a seller.
It sounds like it was like by mistake, it was a match made in heaven because you believed so much in the product, but you were selling something that actually was also something that you believed in because you needed it yourself, and you saw the added value of that.
Yeah, and Ronan, even more than that, the fact that like sales was going through a huge transformation that was favorable to a former engineer. It was going from every sales team being this like outside sales team, knocking on doors, selling $1 million deals, not data driven because no one used the CRM, like has this magical mystic reputation, to, for the first time, teams that are totally inside, dependent on the CRM, dependent on data, dependent on process and science, all this stuff. And here I come in as a fresh slate with no sales background, but a very engineer mindset. It was just, who could have predicted that?
Right.
You know what I mean? It was such luck.
But that's a good question. I'm not sure yet, but I think you have really good decision-making skills. I'm wondering, like, also, like, our audience could understand how you make those kinds of decisions. Let's say, like you said, I'm going to choose the blockchain industry, right? What would you tell an entrepreneur to choose an industry by what factors?
Well, there's a couple things in there on the decision making. I mean, first off, like you're asking me to evaluate an industry. It's like, that's a tough one. Because when I went into school, nanotechnology was like a big hot thing. It never really went anywhere. Mobile took a long time to kick in, and it eventually kicked in. I mean, I'm not sure I've got the best instincts there. Probably a little bit. I mean, when I evaluate companies as an example, I put a lot of weight on customer value creation. So maybe there's something there. Is I do think a lot of investors, when I ask people what's product market fit, 95% of the time they talk about like people buying your product. And I think that's completely wrong. People buying your product is like your message and value prop is resonating. But like people seeing value from your product, that's product market fit. So maybe there's something there in terms of like what industry should you go at is like early signs that people are starting to see value from it. That's kind of what I look for when I invest. But, to be honest with you, I progressed in my career from a 22-year-old who had this 10-year plan and nothing could distract me from that to having again reflected on, joining HubSpot, going to sales, writing a book, joining the faculty at HBS, starting a venture capital firm, none of which was planned. And now I'm just kind of like, I have a mission because of the gifts that I've been given to help entrepreneurs with revenue. That's the gift I've been given. And I want to dramatically decrease the failure rate of startups through revenue best practices. So when HBS is like, yeah, hey, we need to do a sales class. We read your book, can you build a sales class here? I'm like, geez, that's an amazing platform to do that goal. And when a guy at Bessemer, one of the top venture capital firms, is like, hey, we should start a venture capital firm that's running back by VPs of sales because it's missing from the investing community, I'm like, that's a huge idea. And I'm very blessed that I'm hit with like 5 ideas a day. Hey, join my company. Hey, invest in this. Hey, advise me here. Hey, and I'm like, I wish I could say yes to everything, but I can't. And so I just have this extreme filter on like, I have a certain amount of time I can spend on work. My mission is to help entrepreneurs, and I have to dedicate that time across platforms that will have the biggest impact. That's the way I think about it.
And do you think that a business school is a significant part of a journey, that people should go to business school? I know it's tricky to ask you that since you're sort of part of the system, but you're also part of a different system. And, there's so many opinions, and I have to share something. Like I so much leaned towards thinking that business school is the most impractical thing in the world, and that to just, gain experience. And I understand that like in the United States that it's something of a status symbol. And maybe also some sort of screening system. But I heard you lecture at a HubSpot conference, and you were so practical. And it sort of made me think that maybe these days business school has become practical and not sort of behind.
Yeah, it's trying to. I mean, I think that was part of the reason why HBS wanted me to come over there. So you would think I'd be super biased in like, yeah, go to business school because it really changed my life. Like MIT was huge for me, and I'm on the faculty at Harvard Business School. But it's not for everyone. It really isn't. Like, let's take entrepreneurship aside. Like, if you're in management consulting, you love management consulting, yeah, I don't think you really need to go to business school. Like, just stay there and become a partner. But if you're in one trajectory and you want to like really change because you went down the wrong path for a couple of years, that's a great venue. Okay, so that's great if you want to do a career change. I also probably wouldn't go to business school if you're going to the same tier, right? So if you went to a tier 2 school for undergrad and you really only get into a tier 2 school for business school, I'd be hesitant. But if you can level up, if we went to a tier 2 undergrad and you had a great experience, you did well in the first couple of years in your work, and now you can go to a top 5 school, that's probably going to have enormous impact on your career, okay, and your marketability. So I'd consider that. Now in entrepreneurship, like if you're 22 and you start a business and you're CEO and you scale the thing to $20 million, like you crushed it. I don't know if I'd do business school, but not everyone did that, versus if you're an entrepreneur and you did a company and it was a success, but you were like a frontline person, or you did 1 or 2, like it is a great way, especially in the US, to have a first impression. When you're 28, there's not a lot you could have done. And that was huge for me with MIT. It was like, without MIT, I wouldn't have gotten 90% of the investor meetings I did.
So like maybe the cliche of networking is true?
Absolutely. Well, first off, there's a brand association with big top schools. They're like, and it's validated. Like not everyone can get into those schools. Like they're like, that's probably a smart person. I should listen to what they're saying. So that's a big deal. The network is huge, okay, from an entrepreneur standpoint. Now the practical element, like the schools are trying and they're getting there. To be honest with you, business school apps are down. HBS, MIT, Chicago, and Stanford are not affected right now, but other schools are dramatically. And I think it's because of the misalignment between what's being taught and where students want to go. Largely business schools were built out of like getting people ready for management consulting careers and banking careers. And, especially banking, like that stuff's declining a bit. And there's a huge rise in entrepreneurship, which requires practicality. So the speech you saw me at HubSpot, my class is extremely practical. I teach people to sell. I teach people to hire reps. And the great thing about HBS is they sell 30 million cases a year to other business schools. So like 80% of curriculums taught at other business schools is inspired and leverages what I build at HBS for sales. So that's a huge impact, right? So hopefully I'm doing my part and my peers are doing our part to, evolve the MBA to be continually relevant, including making it very practical for entrepreneurs.
I also liked your point about new pathways. It's like a reboot. So it's like, I'm not sure if the correct thought I had right now was right. Here, let me find a different way of thinking. For those people, it's I like that. That's smart.
For sure.
And from that situation, like you were at a stage where the .com that we talked about before, but from early on, did you feel that your attributes were the people person sales attribute?
Yeah. I mean, I think I always, if you look back at myself as say a teenager or early 20s, what was pretty unique about me was I was like into the real geeky stuff of like math and science and coding, but I was also like very personable.
Which is rare.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's just unique. I mean, it exists, but it was just one of my uniquenesses that as you looked across my peers, like there are people who were like super deep, deep into the science, but they just were introverts and they had challenges connecting and communicating with people. And there were outgoing people who like had tons of street smarts, but like struggled with the deep science, right? And so that's always something that I strive to do is, appreciate my uniqueness and how I can express that through the things that I do. So yes, I mean, there were certainly patterns of that in the early part of my, my education.
And when you hire someone, the things that you learned or the characteristics that you have, how does that affect how you hire a salesperson or someone in business development?
Not a ton. I mean, like that, I think that you could get into some scary situations where you're basically hiring people like you, which that is a huge trap in hiring that leads to underperformance and a lack of diversity and groupthink and lack of, and significant groupthink, which can really kill businesses. When I hire, I look very deeply at the tasks that the person needs to do. It sounds so obvious, but it's often overlooked in hiring managers at all levels. A classic example, if we take sales, for example, people really overweight experience in your industry and underweight the specific sales tasks that need to happen. Right. So like they might just like, oh, we're looking for someone with 5 years of experience in, in blockchain. We go back to that example. And that's all they really look at. I mean, they could essentially hire the person from the resume. So why even do an interview? But at the end of the day, if I were interviewing that person, I would look at this blockchain company and be like, okay, they're selling to banks. They're $1 million deals. It's going to require them to get feet in the door. They need to do like deep discovery and pain development and then coerce a decision-making unit to buy a thing and then get the thing through procurement. So I'm going to be diving deep into their abilities and the sales skills on how to do that. And if there's gaps, I'm going to be looking heavily at their coachability to learn how to do it within our context. That's going to drive. And I would much rather take people from other industries besides blockchain who've done that and teach them the blockchain stuff than I would to grab like an underperforming blockchain rep just because they've been in the industry for 5 years. So that's an example is like I'm not trying to hire people like me. I'm trying to like be extremely analytical about what the raw talent, skills, behaviors are necessary for this role and how I can creatively assess that efficiently within an interview process.
So sort of like simulating how their job would be, imagining them.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I say like, tell me about a time you did this. Like, screw that. Like, here's my company. What are you going to do? Like, let's do a role play of you selling my product. I don't know what your product does. Great. Here's 10 pages on my product. Go read it. Come back in a day and let's do it. You know what I mean? Like sometimes like when you just ask yourself, how am I going to train this person when they join my company? Why wait for training? Let's just do it during the interview.
Right.
See how they do.
So that's on a hiring perspective. And today you're also a VC, right? So does the same simulation work when you're thinking about who to invest in? Or is it from the impact point of view where you're saying, now my mission is to help entrepreneurs revenue-wise, Okay.
Yeah.
Is that more a majority of the aspect, or is it the attributes as you hire people as well?
Yeah, it's a tricky one because you're like, okay, I am trying to help entrepreneurs. However, as a venture capitalist, I have a bunch of investors in me. A big part of which their promise is that I return a good return for them. Okay. So I'm not running a consulting business. I'm not looking for problems to fix, right? I'm looking for exceptional investments. And, it's just, I've never heard of or met a business, even like the future Atlassian, Zoom, Dropbox, Twilio, they had a lot of problems as they scaled.
Right.
Like there's never, ever been a business I know of who like they thought of an idea. They went out and talked to people about it. Everyone loved it. They raised a ton of money. They started selling it. It flew off the shelves with no issues. They went public and it's crushing it. Like every business you talk to, there's always like huge issues. They almost ran out of money. Everyone was churning, like, so it's just like, if you're out there looking for perfect businesses with no hair on them, it just doesn't exist. But you're just trying to understand which gaps or risks you're willing to take versus which you're not. Okay. So with our venture capital firm, we're backed and run by sales and marketing execs. So I'm not willing to take on product risk. Like I didn't build it for that. Right. So that's what I look heavily at is, do they truly have a strong foundation of product market fit? And then what steps have they taken to building the go-to-market side? Where are those gaps and how can we, are we willing to take those on? All right. So the first place I'm starting, this is unique to me in the stage I invest at, the types of business I invest at, is I look heavily at customer retention, churn, and customer value creation and product usage. That's what I look at first. And if there's gaps there, it's like they don't have product market fit. Like even if they're tripling revenue.
But isn't that something that you can actually maybe tap into and sort of fix?
We could, but like oftentimes maybe it depends. Like I have taken those on, and if I look under the hood and basically there's certain pockets that are doing great and certain pockets that are not, then that's an ICP, an ideal customer profile issue. We got to align the sales, the MQL definition around it. We got to align the sales comp with it, and we can fix it. And that could be an amazing business, and that's a great investment opportunity because it looks like it's underperforming, but it really isn't through a quick fix, and we can go. But if it's like you just don't have those, I mean, that's kind of a restart on the product side. And my LPs and my backing is not in product management, so I don't want to take that one on. So that's kind of like a unique view that we have on the investor community is I do find that most investors over-index on top-line revenue growth, as do entrepreneurs. You're like, ask an entrepreneur, how's your company doing? First thing they say, revenue. Investor, first question they ask, how's your revenue growing? And we don't talk that much about retention, customer value creation, and product usage, right? So I would much rather, of course, I love the businesses that are tripling revenue and have like 110% revenue retention, amazing. But I'd much rather have, 50% growth with 120% revenue retention than 300% growth and 50% revenue retention.
Right. But the revenue question is sort of like the MIT answer. It's like you probably are getting, so many companies that want you to invest because you're also, you're an influencer. So you have to somehow, like if I'm looking, let's say I want money from your VCs, like yes. I would approach you. Would I have what would be the right approach to you? Like what would be intriguing to you?
It's very similar to the sales process, right? Like when I go sell software to someone, the wrong thing to do, which unfortunately most sellers do, is they have their PowerPoint slides of 10 slides of what their business does and how much money they've raised and what their sales strategy is, et cetera. Sorry, this is to a seller, to customers, like what the product does and other case studies. When you're selling to a customer, the best way to sell is to understand what their goals, their challenges are, and decide whether or not you're a good fit. And if you are, pitch it. And if you're not, walk away. It's the same thing with raising money. So just understand, if you're a seed funded business developing your product, I don't need the 30-minute pitch. You're not ready. That's not that against you. It's just I pitched my investors at a certain stage. If you're doing 20 million in revenue, it's too late. you're doing great. You're a growth investment opportunity. That's not where my business model is.
Right.
So the first thing is just like, can you tell me about your fund and your investment thesis? Yeah, sure. We invest when you're between 1 and 5 million in revenue, and we look for exceptional customer retention, and we look for people who are scaling through a sales team. If you fit those three things, let's talk.
It seems like you have sort of two very different hats. Because on the VC side, you have to be pretty strict and sort of make harsh decisions and be very judgmental. And then on a completely different angle, you're very much about empowering people and helping organizations scale and teaching them how to do that. And you're way more tolerant there. Like, do you find like there's some balance here?
Not really. I find it very circular, right? It's like, because I'm out there I'm seeing tons of deals and I'm assessing deals and I'm, we made 10 investments. So I get in deep with them and I know like where the problems are and what works. And I see my friends who are doing it too. And then I circle that back into the classroom, where I let that drive theory that's more practical. And I watch my students apply it. And then I circle that back into my public speaking where you saw me, Noah, to like generally speak to folks, which then attracts deal flow and starts the process. So it's like even though it's like, wow, this guy's a public speaker, he's a venture capitalist and an academic, it's like all the same. It's just like, that's just a job to me. That's like a circular job. In the same way a CEO hires people, manages the street, does the public speaking, it's just like, it's a circular, highly related job.
Like mega inbound marketing for your VC at the end.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as an HBS, faculty, I get like insider access to the best deal flow that's coming out of Harvard, MIT, Stanford, Wharton. Like that's pretty valuable to a venture capitalist. A lot of VCs are like, how can I get a faculty position at a top business school? You know what I mean? It's like, so it's all very circular.
Did you close that circle? Did you, like once upon a time, educate someone to become, not yet.
Wait, close it and why? Did I purposely try to drive it?
Starting with educating.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, that startup you invested in.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's in the early sequences. Like we have policies against investing in our students, obviously. Like then you're given grades and it's weird. So I can't invest till after they graduate. Okay. I have done that. We haven't done it through the fund yet, just because it just hasn't happened. I did invest in students from 2 years ago that did quite well. And a lot of the stuff they use, I mean, they dramatically redirected their strategy based on my own coaching of them, both through the classroom as well as an investor. I think that they'll do quite well. So, I mean, it's gotten pretty close. It's gotten pretty close to closing that gap. And I have brought like tons of my own investment work into the classroom as cases.
And what would you say your superpower is?
I would say like pattern recognition across like a huge spectrum of data points and summarizing it in a way that's tailored to the audience I'm speaking to.
Can I try? Because I think that practicality and simplicity, like taking complex and decision making, like making it really simple to a go, no go.
Yeah, synthesizing, like sense making. Yeah, I think that says a lot of it. It's like, but I think there's a piece that's tailored to my audience because I'm preparing for an exec ed class on Friday. And I looked at the backgrounds of the 90 students and I have to teach them sales strategy. And I had to teach sales strategy to my MBAs 2 weeks ago. But like, that's two very different pitches. Like my MBAs are 27-year-olds that have 4 years of experience in like various industries. And now I'm going to go teach a bunch of like 40 and 50-year-olds who are like CEOs of large businesses. It's very different. It's something like that. It's like synthesizing and tailoring it to the audience.
Right. And what would you say your kryptonite is?
Saying no.
We get that a lot.
Yeah, it's hard. And actually, believe it or not, this has been crushing. Conflict avoidance. It's a little rooted in my childhood, but it was a real struggle for me as a leader because you can't like avoid conflict as a leader. You have to take it head on. You have to give negative feedback. And I think I evolved to be good at managing conflict and giving negative feedback, but it took a lot of effort, therapy, and coaching for me to get there. And it's still something like I just don't enjoy, but I know it's necessary to perform. So that is a kryptonite.
It's also definitely a sales-oriented feature, right?
Yeah, I mean, as a seller, you're good at getting people to say yes, not, if you're a CFO, you better be good at saying no. right? So it just depends like what your role is.
I feel that on that side. I get you. And I have a question now. What would be your happy end game right now? If you would wish yourself in like 10 years, where would you want to see yourself?
See, that kind of conflicts with my serendipitous lifestyle. But like, I think I'm psyched to have had the opportunity at HBS, and, going into it, everyone's kind of like, is this dude for real? Is he going to perform? And I think now, like, looking back, like, I think they're glad that I'm there, and it's just really awesome to see so many of my students go off and do great things based on stuff that was in classrooms. That's been like really rewarding. I think, more recently we've started the venture capital firm, and the big mission there is the failure rate of startups that raise a Series A round is 70%. And the failure rate for startups that raise a Series C round, much larger, longer, farther along, is also 70%. And so that says to me that like while we've progressed in our entrepreneur understanding, thanks to like lean startup and agile and all that kind of stuff in the early phases, we haven't progressed in how to scale. And so that's what I really want to impact is through Stage 2 Capital, my venture firm, as well as the related work at HBS and other places, I hope that I can make a dent in that like the failure rate as businesses move further declines because we've as entrepreneurs have understood more science and process to how to scale.
Which I think also your book reflects very much. And I think it also can have that impact. And I really recommend anybody listening who has any touch with business to read that book.
Cool. Thanks, Noah. All the proceeds go to a nonprofit, build.org, which helps underprivileged kids through entrepreneurship. So thanks for that plug.
Amazing. We'll definitely add a link then in the notes. All right. So we want to be respectful of your time. We know you have to go. So thank you so much. And we wish you to actually achieve your end game.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, folks, for helping. Enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.
Real life.
Superpowers.
Up in the sky, it's a bird. It's a plane.
Gentlemen, we can rebuild him. We have the technology.
It's alive.
Real life.
Superpowers.